So first up, the Chief Regulatory Officer for the British Horse Racing Authority. It's time for me to say a very good morning to Brant Dunshea. Thank you for joining us, Brant.
Good morning, Nick. Thanks for the opportunity to come on.
Not at all. You've been incredibly busy leading the team to put together a 33-page document just telling us all exactly how race days might work. And I say might because nothing's for sure. How confident are you that we'll be racing on June the 1st?
I'm incredibly confident, Nick. Of course, we are not in a position to be able to control, government decision making. However, we have been working continuously to ensure that we are in the best position we possibly can be to resume on 1 June, and that's what our intention is. Of course, the resumption is linked to government's decision to move to the next phase of easing of lockdown conditions and enabling sport to commence behind closed doors. But yeah, we're incredibly excited and incredibly positive about it happening on the 1st of June.
You said you've based your document on the government framework. There are lots of parts of that. The most significant one is the elite sport return. Phase 1 is the only part of that three-phase document that has so far been published. It's called Elite Sport Return to Training Guidance. Would you concede that this document is not really of much strict relevance to what you're trying to put together? You need to wait for the other two documents to come through.
We do need to wait. We anticipate that the Step 3 will be published this week. The reason we published our document yesterday was that we needed to ensure that our participants, our stakeholders, had the opportunity to prepare appropriately for 1 June. Now, we have our Chief Medical Advisor, Dr. Jerry Hill, has been working collaboratively with a group of other sports medical advisors and government to develop the draft guidance. The guidance. So, we know that Step 1. If we look at the themes that flow through Step 1, there's a lot of information there that will assist us in our planning and preparation. And what we, of course, have developed is a document that is contingent very much on the publication of the Step 3 guidance this week, and we will be in a position to make variations to that if we need to.
Yeah, so let's just take you through those three steps again. First of all is the training document, Elite Sport Return to Training Guidance. Then there's the second document,
correct,
training in a contact environment, which again is not specifically germane to horse racing but more for other elite sports. And the final stage is the stage you're talking about. This is what Oliver Dowden, the Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, said on Wednesday. The final stage would then be the guidelines as to whether they can resume behind closed doors. In doing that, we've been guided by the health advice, and I can update you again today for the 4th time. There were meetings between Elite Sports and Public Health England to find out how we can do it safely, much of what you've said on the programme before, what Nick said. If we can do it safely, I'd like us to be able to get it up and running towards mid-June, if that is possible. When I read that, I feel a little jittery. Am I wrong to feel jittery? Are we now escaping the yoke of all the other elite sports, effectively?
I think what we've got to understand is that all the way through this process, in our engagement with government have recognised that we are different to the other sports that are being referred to as well. So we largely are a rural-based sport. We are an outdoor environment, so both our training and our racing environments are outdoor, which pose lower levels of risk and position us as a very different type of sport to football, rugby, for example, where we have lots of close contact in those contact sports. So very, very comfortable that our sport is being seen as being a different sport to other contact sports by government, and I'm sure that in the context of that broader comment, it was focusing more on the contact sports rather than a sport such as racing.
So you've had an absolutely specific steer from the DCMS that racing will be treated differently and will be able to resume on June the 1st if you satisfy the criteria.
It's been recognised by government at a number of levels that we are different, and we appreciate that, because we've been advocating all the way through that we do have our own unique circumstances which shape the way our sport is both from a training perspective and in competition is structured.
Even if government doesn't release phase 3 until the very back end of this week, will you still be taking 72-hour declarations, and will you be taking entries, advance entries, as early as Tuesday this week?
Yes, that will be our plan, Nick. The 72-hour declarations, just to be clear, has been put in place to enable us the opportunity to pull together all of the logistics. This is quite a logistic challenge for us to put in place the measures, the screening measures, gather the information we need to before a race day. So yes, we do intend to do that, even though the publication of the guidance may be a little later in the week.
With that in mind, with that third phase not published till later in the week, is it possible that this document that you've spent a long time putting together could change significantly between now and then?
We are very comfortable that our planning and all the work that we've done has been in line with the approach that we believe government will be comfortable with. So whilst there may be elements once the publication of the Step 3 guidance comes out that could require some change, we don't believe we will need to change our approach materially, but we're agile. This whole process has been very flexible and evolved continuously, and we're prepared to make whatever changes would need to be made to satisfy that Step 3 guidance to resume on 1 June.
Yeah, it's absolutely clear, Brant, that you and your team have put an enormous amount of work into this. There's a comprehensive screening process that is going to take place on all racecourses for all people who attend racetracks. If you test over 37.8 degrees, the lower reading of 2 readings taken, you won't be allowed into the racecourse. I'll come back to that in a few moments' time. You've got a clear policy on PPE as distinct from specific medical masks that might have to be worn by certain personnel, medics and cleaners and so forth. It's all in there. Question I'd like to ask is, why is there no testing process? Why have you decided against a testing procedure for all the participants likely to be at the racecourse?
Okay, can I just say from the outset, this hasn't been a piece that's just been the work of my team or the BHA team. I've got to extend a huge thanks to individuals from stakeholder groups right across the industry, jockeys, trainers, racecourses. It's been a huge effort. So it hasn't been just our work, it's been a really much an industry piece of work. In answer to your question, Nick, it's quite straightforward. We are adopting a risk-based approach. Government's guidance is the most key here. So presently, government aren't instructing that people that do not have symptoms be tested. So we're aligning our approach with current government guidance in a risk-based way. So to explain that in more detail, what we're saying is having a layered approach, which includes a surveillance program in the background, complemented by a training and education module, then having a health-based screening process, complemented by the other checks that will happen on a race day when an individual arrives. We believe that risk-based approach is most appropriate for the specifics of our sport, comparative to other sports or industries. So, as I said earlier, largely rural-based, outdoor training and competitive environment, and we believe that is most relevant. So each of those layered risk mitigating approaches will enable us to ensure that when an individual gets to a racecourse, the safest possible environment we can provide is provided.
You have to be scrupulously careful here, I completely understand that. In the document it says that if somebody arrives with a horse, one of the stable staff, box driver, whoever it might be, whoever he or she might be, and they test over 37.8, there is a procedure by which they would be sent back. Does that mean if one person in a horse box with several horses that are going to run is over that threshold, those horses will not be allowed to run?
Yes, if they've travelled together, that is the answer, Nick. We have to be incredibly cautious and careful, and the same would go for an individual that travels to the racecourse not in a horse box. If two individuals from the same household travelled together to the racecourse and one was demonstrating an elevated temperature, they'd both be treated the same similarly, and we have to adopt that approach to be cautious. It's as simple as that.
Another interesting point in your document is that there will be a maximum of 2 stalls handlers to push horses into the stalls in those first few weeks. There is a plethora of 2-year-old races for unraced horses slated in that period. You also ask trainers not to bring horses to the races that are flighty, fractious, difficult in the stalls, which is a perfectly understandable request. But would you concede that it's a request that trainers will find it almost impossible to meet with horses of that inexperience?
Look, what we're requesting trainers to do is work with us and exercise their best judgment in the circumstances. I accept it's difficult, and we only have an understanding of the behaviour of horses that have previously raced, of course. So we have to rely on the professionalism of our trainers to ensure that they also appreciate that this is a really challenging environment for all of us to work in. And if we want to ensure that we're delivering a successful product and we're mitigating and limiting the risk to individuals, that we've all got to work collaboratively together. And I've got to say, Nick, like this process has been one incredibly large collaboration. You know, I've been meeting on a weekly basis with jockeys, with trainers, talking through all of these different issues. And whilst we haven't mandated that trainers don't bring horses that may have some sorts of vices, we're asking and we're requesting that they do so to help us help not just the BHA and those that are working on a racecourse on a race day, but to help the whole of the industry. It's for their own benefit as well.
And I know you would be keen to stress, and I would be keen to support you, that this is an evolving situation. And what is in this document, stringent though it may seem at the moment, could easily change after 2 or 3 weeks. Am I right in suggesting you would like to see quite a bit of it evolve before Royal Ascot takes place? So, for example, you can then enable races of more than 12 runners to take place, because at the moment it's 12 for non-listed and group races and over 12 for listed and group races.
What we have had to do is we've had to apply an approach which ensures we're mitigating as many risks as we possibly can. Injury data has been analysed, fall, unseat slip-up rates have been analysed. What we've tried to do is strike the balance between providing an environment where few people or few horses get an opportunity to compete with an environment where more horses can race. I mean, strictly speaking, if we wanted to be completely risk averse, we wouldn't race at all, or we'd have 6 runner fields. We can't do that. It's not right. So we're striking the balance, and we've done an analysis of pattern and listed races, and they clearly demonstrate there are less incidents in that class of race. So we've made our announcements this week regarding those races. Of course, we want to return to more normalised conditions as soon as we possibly can, and we will constantly be risk assessing the situation and making decisions as we go to get back to those normal conditions. Because I've had lots of conversations. I know you've got William Haggis on later. I've spoken with William, and of course we want to get back to those conditions as soon as we can, but we've got to do it in a safe way.
Sure. Brant, the first fixture, again, is scheduled for Newcastle on June the 1st. The northeast at the moment is one of the hardest hit areas as things stand, because the pandemic has migrated up the country. Could that be a factor? Could regionalised shutdowns become a factor? And have you got the flexibility that France have shown to start rejigging those fixtures?
We've got the flexibility to rejig fixtures at very short notice. We do that routinely anyhow. When we aren't in this sort of situation, we can put a fixture on very quickly and move them around. The government haven't adopted a regional approach at this time to their overall handling of the pandemic. So what we are doing is ensuring that the most important thing is providing an environment where risks for those attending are minimised. So, for example, in our guidance, you'll see we recommend that we're advising that people travel directly from the yard or their home to the racecourse and don't stop unless absolutely necessary, and similarly on returning back. So there'll be little contact at all, in fact, with the broader environment around the racecourse itself. So we know that our people are coming from an environment that is lower risk than others. So we are bringing together a group of people in a racecourse. In some respects, it doesn't even matter where that racecourse is. That is a very safe environment because of the measures we're putting in place right throughout the process, from the moment horses leave the yard to the moment they get home at night.
Brant, one final question. 11 to 4 on currently, racing to take place on June the 1st. You're not allowed to bet, but if you were, would you take the 11 to 4
I'm
on?
not.
You're on?
What I'll say, Nick, is I'm incredibly confident that we will be racing on the 1st of June.
Perfect.
We can't control what decisions government make, but we're incredibly confident, and we're working hard and planning towards 1 June being our resumption date, and we're all very excited about that.
Brant Dunshea, Chief Regulatory Officer for the British Horse Racing Authority. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.